This cheers break has brought to you by water.
Drink it.
Hi, everybody. Yes, I guess that was our intro. Yeah. We just needed to drink some water because it's hot.
Always gotta hydrate, you know?
Oh, yes, that's also very true. Welcome to the Media Boys. We discuss media. Lucas, I am your host. Not your host. I acknowledged you before I acknowledged the audience, so I apologize. Yes, I'm your host, Andre. My co-host, Lucas. Say
yes, hi. I'm here as well. We're both hosting this podcast.
Mm-hmm. How's your day?
Today has been okay. I started off with work, and then now I'm here recording this podcast. And I just drank some water, so, you know, could be better, but it could be worse.
You know what? My day's been exactly the same, except I didn't work at all. So
you did nothing productive for society.
Yeah, not today at least. I mean, do I do any day? I don't know. I mean, this might be. I mean, I think we got no views on the second one, so like this will be interesting. But I think we'll have a better. Well, we should have a better thumbnail though.
Yes.
So something a little bit more visually.
You will listen and you will like this podcast.
If you do, hopefully you like. I guess I don't know. Hello. Sorry, we've been drinking a lot of water. Quote unquote water.
Spicy water.
Okay, well, we do have topics of discussion, but I wanted to start off with like general casting news that's been going around. Now, I didn't know about some of these things, but I guess some of them have just come to light and stuff. Well, this actually first one is not really a casting news.
Wait, let me guess. We're talking about Idris Elba playing Knuckles in the next Sonic film.
I mean, we could start with that if you want. I mean, that actually, I wasn't going to talk about that.
Wow.
Well, because I don't know.
It might be outdated by the time this podcast comes.
Well, not only that, but I don't know how, because it should be out by the end of the week, but I don't know, like, what we would talk about, I guess. I guess that's just any casting news.
You're like, casting news. And we'll talk
okay.
About that.
I thought...
Since the internet is well-versed in the Sonic world.
So, the Wes Anderson's film, The French Dispatch, has been getting a bunch of festival runs, but news about his next film has already been coming out about him casting and stuff like that. I mean, he already has people like Adrian Brody, Bill Murray, Tilda Swinton, and... a couple weeks back, they announced that Tom Hanks will be joining Wes Anderson cast. The first time Tom Hanks would have ever been in a Wes Anderson film. Not only that, but
it's gonna be a good movie.
Apparently today they announced that Scarlett Johansson has also been cast.
Oh wow!
So yeah, that whole thing is
just gonna start a cinematic universe. Whatever movie this is.
Do you think that like directors in their mind think that like the movies they make are in the same universe? I mean, like probably not, right? But like
maybe not all of them. I feel like sometimes maybe they'll when they make it a movie, they would think this movie could take place in the same world as this other movie I've made. You know?
True. Yeah, because like whether it's comparable tones or like stories or stuff like that.
They don't, especially if they didn't write the film, it's difficult to like kind of put yourself there, when you know that it wasn't written with that intention. Mm-hmm. But I'm sure people in the headcanon, all the films they make are in the same universe.
Right.
As a character.
Okay. But yeah. So another interesting thing that I read was that Tiffany Haddish and Lakeith Stanfield have been cast in the Haunted Mansion reboot that Disney is doing. They're apparently rebooting the Haunted Mansion, and they're casting them as like the parents, I guess.
I didn't even think about that movie.
Yeah! You're like, oh man, what movie could he be talking about? Wait, what? They're making it.
When the conversation comes out, like, what is Disney gonna remake next? And everyone's always like, this and that. Like, it's always some obscure third party that we kind of had all forgotten about, and then they bring it back again.
Yeah, that's very true, actually. I mean, like, look, I mean. The Haunted Mansion now doesn't really hold up, but I do remember watching that quite a lot as a kid.
I did. Eddie Murphy, right?
Yeah, and I do like Eddie Murphy. And like I remember being in the ride at Disneyland and stuff like that.
Disneyland ride, because that's what all these movies are about. It's about the rides at Disneyland.
It's really just about the rides at Disneyland.
I wonder what is it going to be like the same? What was the original? Was it like a PG or G rated?
I think it was a PG, because I think it had some mild terror or something.
I wonder if they're gonna get because I wonder if they're gonna pick the same tone with this one. Are they gonna go like a PG-13 and try and make it like a little edgier?
Oh, like kind of like in a vein of Cruella or something like that, where they try to like more darken the tone slightly.
Like new audience. They know we all like our dark humor, so they want to make it nice and scary. And horror movies, it's a big thing. Maybe they'll have a trailer make it look like a horror film.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that could happen. That'd be fair. We'll have to see how this project comes about, because I'm not really even sure like what they could do with it. You know, because like I don't know, it'd just be another Haunted Mansion thing. You know?
It would probably different like.
Well, it'd certainly be different tonally. I'm very sure, because the other one treated so more as like a comedy. I think this
like
one,
family comedy.
I feel like this one is gonna try to be like faux horror, or PG-13 horror, but it's not just PG-13
like
horror.
Comedy,
it's like PG-13 Disney horror.
Yeah, like a Disney Happy Death Day. You know?
Yeah. Right. All right. Well, that was all. I didn't really have any other news. I mean, the only thing that I thought interesting was that they supposedly are doing a Exorcist sequel trilogy. So they're making 3 new films. The first of which is going to be a sequel to like The Exorcist.
So they already have 3 slated.
Yeah, like apparently, like I think who owns the rights? Universal. I think Universal put like $400 million into like this like project, which is kind of crazy because like. I don't know, given, like, the rise of, like, supernatural horror with things like The Conjuring or Insidious, like, kind of rising in popularity, like, I don't know how many, like, people would be interested in them revisiting The Exorcist. Now, granted, they are...
Stuff? I think that's pretty popular.
Well, it's popular, but what I'm saying is, like, the name Exorcist, like, I don't think it would have been any more popular. Like, if, let's say, they had just made an original, like, property.
Like reboot it. Oh,
if they just done a different type of haunting movie, right, with an exorcism, they probably would have had the same type of quality. Now, granted, they are bringing back, like, Ellen Burstyn, who was original cast member. So she is, like, returning. It's directed by the same dude who did in the Halloween movies, who kind of did that whole reboot thing. So I guess
if it's going to be a sequel, it means the first one are canonical, you know?
Sure. So like maybe, like, they're going to tie it in.
And a big thing with the whole,
somehow.
like, being buried in the dead bodies, you know, where they didn't move any of the dead bodies to the cemetery, and that's why that's all of them they're underneath the house and stuff, you know?
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe it'll be like a bigger, like not a conspiracy, but like a whole nation. Oh my god, all the spirits.
They already tried to do that with like Rings.
With the video.
The video, and everyone was watching it. I'm sorry.
I imagine that like instead of like a pandemic, it's like the Ring videos like wipes out like
billions of people. Like the entire planet is now infested with like ring girls.
Yeah.
But then like aliens try to like invade the planet with the ring girls. See, like these are concepts Hollywood needs.
Yeah. No, that's realistic. That's what I'd pay to see,
realistic. You know? Maybe. Okay. Well, anyways, I guess we should get into our topics of discussion today. So, for those of you who are new, we do a discussion of a video game, movie, and album each week, whether it's recommended by myself, Lucas, or mutually. What do you want to start with today? Maybe Super Meat Boy?
Yeah, a video game choice of the week.
Okay, yes. So we had a somewhat mutual game choice. I mean, I was just kind of scrolling through games, and we were all just like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll play this one, I guess. So it is Super Meat Boy. It is a platformer gore game, I guess you could call it that.
Yeah, I wouldn't know what it's like not like a puzzle, but like a death run, I guess would be.
A death run game would be a good way to put it. I mean, there are some puzzle aspects to it.
Death run platformer, I would say.
Yeah,
because there's not really any puzzles, but there is some platforming puzzles.
Yeah, so you have to wall
jumping and stuff, etc.
Yeah, so
simple controls.
Yeah, basically, you're Meat Boy, and you have to rescue Bandage Girl from Dr. Fetus.
Yes. It is a Newgrounds game, if that gives it any context.
This game definitely is very just toneless, I guess. Like, it kind of knows exactly what it's hearkening back to, and, like, the type of game it's supposed to be. I have to say that, like, when we start off the game, it already kind of started off pretty on a difficult level, at least for me. So this is the big difference. I am not good at games.
He is not a gamer.
I am not a gamer, and like that's kind of why I thought the experiment of this would kind of be interesting to kind of get me out of my comfort zone and that. But Yeah, I gotta be honest. I spent like probably a good 13 hours total trying to beat this game.
You kicked his
yeah,
ass.
And it literally it defeated me. Like, I was in a pummel.
Probably less than half that, I think.
Yeah. I didn't even check my death count. I was too scared because I was like, man, I am dying so many times. And listen, like, even in the very first chapter, right? So it's divided into like 6 chapters with a bonus chapter at the end if you beat the game. But the first chapter is like the forest. It starts off kind of having this like kind of earthy look with like, you know, leaves and like trees, but it soon turns very like almost industrial in some aspects, where you start interacting with saws, having to interact with more walls, and it's the easiest of the entire game.
The first world.
The first world. But I think it total probably took me about an hour to beat. And that's not good. Because I was looking at walkthroughs and playthroughs online, and some people were beating this like 7 minutes. And I was just like, oh, why am I so bad?
It is a frustrating game, you know, if you guys have ever been playing any other, like, sort of different games. Maybe, like, Flash games online, or, you know, reminiscences of, like, Unfair Mario or something, but, like, where it's just, you know, you have to constantly, you are going to die more than once, and you're going to die to the same thing you just died the last run to. And you're going to know exactly why you died, exactly what you need to do to fix it, and you're going to die again. And that just keeps occurring, because this is the kind of game where precision and timing are incredibly important. Like, no, for someone like me, speaking from the perspective of a gamer, like, yes, the first world is definitely not as hard as the rest of it is. So,
right.
Maybe 7 minutes is an exaggeration, you know, but it's something easily half an hour you can get done, you know?
Yeah.
Like, even considering still, Andrew, you know, because the games, each level has you can do the level and it gives you a time, and there's like a set time that you get like an A+ grading on if you get it underneath that set time. So me knowing that I was a bit better at games than Andre was, I decided that I was going to shoot for all those A+, you know? I probably got about 95% of them, you know? Maybe 3 or 4 levels I didn't. So every level I was completing, I was doing it with less death just as fast, but getting the appropriate times, you know, because some of them were, of course, easier than others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, like, in that first level, like, I mean, you're introduced to basic mechanics, like jumping off of walls and being able to kind of slide up with momentum, doing long jumps and whatnot. And so it does. There's a lot of movement, and they do a good job of kind of like setting up that type of world. And I mean, I like the designs of a lot of the characters.
Yeah,
I mean,
I like the music too. The
music is very good. I think in the first level, it's definitely like a nicer, like kind of like more kind of tempered warm-up type music. I like how by the end, like, because after each level you face a boss.
Yes.
And at the end you basically face Dr. Fetus in a giant mech who's running after you. So rather than fighting the boss, you basically just have to run away. That was also one that took me a while.
Yeah, the first one, yeah.
You know, just run and like doing
most of the boss battles aren't actual battles.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think of all, there's only like 2 bosses maybe that actually like hit you to kill you, you know? Like other ones, it's like you're outrunning them, whether... Well, actually, no, there's like 3, but like most of them you're outrunning, whether upwards or sideways.
You're tempted to outrun something, and it is possible to just simply run to the end and then wait and then win the level, you know? Mm-hmm. But some of them you do have to kind of pace yourself and wait for the boss to catch up to you, or something else to catch up to you before you can continue.
Yeah, and with this game, essentially in each level you're trying to capture back Bandage Girl from Dr. Fetus, but every time you get to her, he like comes in like he's always like beating her up.
Very violent.
This game is violent. Like he just like punches her and takes her away. She gets punched like 100 times throughout the entire game. Sometimes it's not even a punch. Sometimes like he'll punch once, he'll kick her, he'll do like a jab thing.
Like a flurry right on her chest and then grab her. Always snatches her by the back of the head and just leaves.
Yeah, and sometimes
so aggressive.
Yeah, and then, like there's even a couple of instances where I'm like, did he just fucking tombstone her? like he, I swear, like pile drives her.
Yeah, choke slam her, you know. Just grabs her, just tosses on the ground, like, all right, now she's mine again.
So yeah, you're trying to capture her from him, and like. There's a lot of stuff that this person does, and they explain at the beginning, Dr. Fetus, that he is evil, and that he does not like anybody.
Nobody likes him either. So.
Yeah. So when you get to like the end of that level, he essentially bombs a forest, and well, first of all, it's spoilers just for the whole game. Everything in the video, we just do spoiler discussions.
Of course.
No, but like with the game, like there's like a squirrel just looking at a bunch of dead bodies of squirrels. He's all like sad.
Piles of dead bodies of squirrels.
And then he gets like his head chopped off by a random like saw.
Yeah, like
half a second before the menu just pops up. So yeah, you're just like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Like, it makes you want to feel bad, and it's like, no, we don't really care. This game is continuing on. Everyone's moving on.
Yeah.
Even our character, like, you would think that maybe with someone as evil as Dr. Fetus, that Super Meat Boy would be like a shining light, a beacon you'd want to look to, but he's kind of a dick in his own way, too, you know?
Yeah, there's a... Because
he's just caught up in all of this, you know?
Yeah, it's definitely a situation of he's very head-focused. He just wants to get his girl,
The role of hero was thrust upon him, you know? He did not accept the mantle.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, this leads into the second level, which is the hospital.
Well, I'd call them worlds, because each
worlds
have different levels.
Yeah, that's true. So the next world's the hospital, which has a lot of new changes to the things. Yeah, like you have to do a little bit more different maneuvering in order to get to places.
The saws, moving saws and spinning saws, that's when those are introduced.
Oh yeah, it's the first time we're introduced to the concept of like...
on the ground, you know?
Yeah, like running things. There are a couple levels involving keys that unlock areas, which wasn't in the first world.
And it's simple. As soon as you collect a key, whatever location that the key would open up, just opens up. You know, you don't have to carry the key back, you know? Mm-hmm. So it's sort of just getting... It's like a platform. You get to the key and then get to where the key would have led you. And it's just like, there's no using anything. It's just moving. Pretty much, movement is the only really option in your choice in this game. There are other characters. We can talk about them, I guess, but I don't think we
didn't get into the... Well, I'll briefly talk about it, because you can unlock other characters by collecting, like, bandages and also the warp zones.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Because there are bandages in each game that you can collect, or not each game, in each level.
Yeah. Well, not every level, but some levels they have bandages.
Yeah.
It's just a collectible item, usually in a difficult-to-reach space, or sometimes it's, like, right at the end of the level, so you have to go back and forth multiple times to get the bandage and then finish it.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes you can't even get them as Meat Boy. You need certain characters with certain abilities.
Previously unlocked certain other characters.
There are things called like warp zones, which if you enter them, you enter into kind of like a mini game, like a mini 3-level platformer of a different type where you play a different character and you're still having to get Bandage Girl, but you have to use these character special abilities. I got stuck in one. And I didn't know I could have just exited it. But I thought, all right, I'm going to go through with this. And they didn't... The thing is, they don't tell you. No. They didn't tell me what button to use or what the move was. So I just kept falling and falling. Like, am I supposed to make this in one hit? And then I look up a walkthrough. It's like, oh, no, you just, like, tap the X to float. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I never went into any war zones. War zones. The whole game is a war zone, to be honest. Yeah. There's just so much crap going on. And like it definitely has a more different aesthetic. Like it's even more industrial to the point where like there's just a bunch of buildings, and sometimes like in certain levels you got to go from building to building. Yeah. And like they definitely expanded on like the lengths of the levels.
You also like a lot higher. This is sort of a theme too throughout each level. Not linearly, but like obviously the forest is a lot of ground levels, and the hospital you're in a lot of buildings, so you're elevated, you know. And as the game goes on, the elevation changes, you know. Some of the later levels, the end level specifically, takes place very high in the sky, you know. Mm-hmm. And then there is also a level that takes place in hell. So it's like
it goes back down,
opposite
basically.
Of it, you know?
Yeah, there's a lot of.
I'm not sure if that's thematic or if that's more just like kind of ironic, you know. Mm-hmm. Like you're climbing up and then you fall and you climb again, you know. The rise and fall and then rise again kind of theme. Yeah,
true. And yeah, there's some other stuff that they introduced. Like they introduced like the fans in this game. Yeah. The fans annoyed the shit out of me.
They were only in that world, I believe, right?
I think we had a couple ones with fans. Well, the thing is, the fans kind of got replaced with something different, which I thought was much worse and harder.
It got even harder.
It made me wish the fans were back, basically. And I mean, like, look, like we said in the first level, the music's good. It kind of has a change of pace, though. Like, this one seems a little more tense, a little more, like, eerie at times, compared to, like, the first worlds.
Yeah, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, you know?
And one thing I do want to mention, some of the level designs, they had, like a shadow design to it, where, like, you couldn't really see any of the characters of the buildings. They were all just kind of pure blacks and stuff, but, like, you were still jumping and playing through the level. There was like a one or two levels that kind of had a different design,
like in the background, like the outline, you know? Like, it's just more like the art style, I would say.
Which I thought was pretty interesting. How they kind of kept that varied.
It's like a 2.5D kind of thing, you know? Not really, it's 2D, of course, but like it looks like they want you to imagine that it takes place in a 3-dimensional world. Mm-hmm. But of course, the game you're playing is strictly 2-dimensional.
Right, and so you know, by the end of this one, you end up having to fight like a giant blood glob as a building is being filled with blood, and you have to kind of like get basically to the end. It's similar to the first boss, but except to running from like left to right, you're running bottom.
Yeah, living.
And this one can actually like jump and attack you or come from you from the side. So that one does attack you slightly, but not necessarily.
It's a bad pattern. Like, of course, you could in a sense outrun it if you just sped to the top, you know. But obviously, like, instead of it just one single movement and, don't touch the bad guy like in the first world, this guy is like, I have certain patterns, I'm going to jump here and there, so you can't stay in the same place the whole time and you can't repeat the same motions. But it's still just as easy, I would say, as the first world, you know? Mm-hmm. Except for the platforming differences.
Yeah. And, you know, by the end, once you reach to the top, you know, like, he kind of what's the term? Like, kind of regresses down to like a single like blob, like a small blob, and he like starts giving our character like a kissy face. Gets kicked, and this is what I think you were mentioning about him kind of being like a dig. Like he kicked him, and he looked like he felt bad, but the dude was like just like rivaling on the floor, and he got like a pillow to insinuate that like,
he was gonna smother him out.
Smother him. I'm like, whoa, why is our like? It felt very weird. Like, why is our main character really doing?
It was.
This?
Yeah, I think it was. I feel like the people who made the animations between after boss fights didn't make the game. Like maybe there was like, hey, this is what you can do whatever you want with this, you know? And it was like there was a story that was being told through the cutscenes and the gameplay. And obviously, I think it was more like a mechanic to lead to the cutscenes, you know?
Yeah, sure. But at the same time, I was just like, this feels weird. That like I'm rooting for him after he does that.
I'm like, okay, so you're not the bad guy here?
Well, that leads us into World 3, which is the Salt Factory, which was, again, a slight increase in difficulty. Yes. They had, like, you know, longer blocks of rocks that you kind of had to do long jumps over.
Yeah, there was a lot of platforming, I like that one, you know? They introduced the mechanics of salt, so basically there'd be certain pockets of, like, you couldn't just touch it because immediately you would die, you know? So maybe instead of it being like a blade, it was like a mound, and you had to jump across it, you know? Oh, excuse me. So it would function the same as the saws would, but just aesthetically it was different. So I thought that was nice because they incorporated the world into it, you know?
Yeah.
So like the puzzles and stuff, everything stayed the same. It's just instead of it being a saw, it was a mound of salt.
Yeah, that's basically, and then sometimes they combine the two. Yeah, they would have both saws and salt, and you're like, this is difficult. Yeah, and I mean, I like the introduction of kind of.
Did that one introduce the lasers or the rockets, or was that
the rockets? Yes, okay. that was the first world with the rockets, where they were essentially they weren't as fast. They were somewhat heat seeking, where like they would come at you and then
they were heat seeking, but it was very like easy to juke. Like if you jumped, they would just wildly miss because they wouldn't be able to recorrect by the time you fell down.
Right.
There were certain levels too where you had to like have the rocket shoot at you and then hit a certain block to unlock your progression. You know. Or like underneath you had to let a rocket shoot so you could fall down and then keep on going.
Yeah.
And so that was interesting how it's like it's not always you had to run away from them. Sometimes you had to use them to open up passageways to continue the level. So you could almost call that a puzzle, you know? But that's like the thinnest of
definitions. That's the thinnest of puzzles. Like, how to get past Boulder.
How do I blow up this wall here?
Hey, what do you know? Yeah. You didn't even notice the rocket the first time you were just walking past.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, the music in this one I think is probably the best so far of the game because it kind of has like some like softer like kind of angelic vocals, but it also has a lot of interesting electronic sections. Yeah. You know, because the other ones were somewhat more rock inspired, I guess, but this one like kind of went full on like electronic, and I definitely like appreciate that. And especially in the music in between like the cutscenes and stuff, it definitely has more of like an 8-bit sound to it. You know,
yeah, it's kind of like especially the cutscenes, they wanted to be like more retro. You know,
yeah, it definitely felt retro like that. And so basically by the end there's this poop monster that like looks like you, but you both have to run away from like rising salt. And you both almost survive. The poop monster like is hanging on the thing and you're like trying to hold him up, but then that fucking fetus, he throws some bricks. Dr. Fetus just throws bricks at it, and I was like, wow, that's messed up, bro.
Instead of throwing bricks at Super Meat Boy, he throws it at the poop man. You know, poop boy, I guess you could call him.
Yeah, just so he could fall and let him die.
Just so Meat Boy just has to see that happen, you know?
Yeah. that and then he gives the wave at the end. He's like, ugh. Yeah. That was when Meat Boy's upset. Which didn't matter because at the beginning of the next world, he just dies and goes to hell, I guess.
Yeah, they're fighting. And it was a little clever, the cutscene, because he's right about to... Dr. Fetus, every now and then he pulls out a pad and he hits a button and something explodes. But he's right in front of Super Meat Boy. He pulls a pad out. And instead of hitting it, he just throws it at Meat Boy and Meat Boy falls off. All the way down to hell, you know?
It's so great. And in hell, oh man.
That was pretty hard. I think that's when it started getting really hard, I think.
Hell was like, it lived up to its name. You gotta admit it. And then, like, so they introduced new enemies. The biggest of which is these fucking Venus flytrap looking things. Like they send like this creature towards you.
Oh yes.
Yeah, and it follows you, but once it hits a wall, it multiplies to smaller versions of that creature. So it forces you not only to have to dodge quickly, but also re-dodge quickly, which I thought was a very frustrating thing to happen. But at the same time, it really made it really did change up like the pace, you know.
I think they wanted to see they wanted to make sure that you weren't like being very static with your movements. You know, just up and down, left and right, diagonal. Mm-hmm. Like they wanted you to know, hey,
you have to jump
diagonal, but then
curve around.
Curve it. You know, don't just jump straight. Make sure you're always moving the left stick because that way. And then it would always hit you at the perfect moment. So you jump to avoid the one that's, Venus flytrap that's going to hit you, and it hits the ground next to you, and then you just happen to be in the way of that diagonal angle for the new one to spawn in.
Right.
So it's very it knows the timing. If you do a certain jump and you don't move afterwards, you're going to get got, you know? So it definitely is sort of like training you in that sense. Okay, I shouldn't move here, so I need to be constantly moving. I think that's more just to prepare you for the next levels, especially towards the end. But yeah, I like the aesthetic of Hell too with all the red, you know? And like how you're going from from the bottom to the top, you know, throughout Hell. Mm-hmm. It's just so funny that that's what they decided to make them. You know?
Yeah, they're just in Hell.
Yeah, Hell. Like, okay.
But, and Hell also comes exclusive with so if you thought the salt was bad, this is like boiling lava.
Yeah.
Not only that, but they also have lava balls.
Oh yeah, it's like a Mario game. Yeah.
Is this the one where the portals are introduced as well, or is that?
No, I think that was in Hell. Yeah.
So the portals are a very interesting aspect of the game too, because whatever you jump into a portal, you'll go into another portal, but you'll go within whatever direction you went in.
Yeah, you keep your momentum.
So if you just walk into it, you'll walk out the other side, but if you jump top into it, you're gonna fall out of the other one.
Yeah, or if you're falling down into it, you're gonna end up falling down out of the next one.
So that was a really interesting mechanic too, because I think that it forced you to kind of prepare and not necessarily rush through certain levels.
That one's definitely more like a timing thing, because if I jump now, I'll get into this portal and I'll land here, you know?
Right.
Because you'll know your momentum carries you the entire way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, there's some interesting... I will say, some of the way that, the lava worked was a little weird because, the perspectives would have, a character, let's say you had to get Bandage Girl, but, she's on the same area as, the lava, but she's not being affected by it, but whenever you would touch it, you would be affected by it. So I thought the perspectives on those were a little strange at times during Hell, but that's really the only, nitpick I guess I have about how some of those things work.
Yeah, it's if you land right next to them, you die, but if you landed on them, you die.
I don't have it. My only they could have just easily put it on a platform.
Yeah,
or something.
I wonder how they came to that decision, that creative decision.
I don't know. But either way, yeah, and then you fight this giant meat monster that was actually attacking you.
Yeah, this is an actual boss battle.
Mm-hmm, you gotta dodge all of his attacks. He's hitting you with his head, his hand. So you gotta do long jumps. You gotta be wary of things coming down,
meteors or something coming from the sky, from above you in Hell.
Right.
So maybe from purgatory, I suppose.
I guess. Yeah. So once you escape from Hell, you go to a world and boom. Dr. Fetus has nuked the world. Yeah. He literally just nukes the planet.
He wants to kill everything.
I guess. He wants Meat Boy alive to witness the destruction,
the downfall of humanity. You know.
I suppose.
Or meat-manity.
Yeah, because Bandage Girl isn't a meat girl, is she?
Well, no, I guess she's a bandage. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
And the question is, does that fetus really grow up to be a meat boy, or is that a human?
Maybe he's
fetus?
the only human. That's why he's Dr.
Oh, everyone hates him because he's the only human fetus.
Except for the squirrels.
Yeah.
The squirrels. I don't think there's any other animals introduced.
Not that I remember.
Or any other living beings besides the squirrels.
Yeah, maybe not. So maybe it is just a world of squirrels.
Dr. Fetus just nuked all the squirrels.
Yeah, all the squirrels are just destroyed.
I mean, and they did title that'd be World 5. They titled it The Rapture.
Oh, so. yeah. Because in the Rapture, it's similar to the hospital in that you're working with a bunch of buildings, but these buildings instead are like apocalyptic.
Yes.
Like they're literally like been destroyed, and the levels are much longer too.
Lengthwise, especially.
And I guess that's to be expected. The longer you go on in the game, the more difficult they should be.
Go, sometimes you even have to come back, and then go forward.
And yeah, there's there's kind of like this interesting like use that they have with like the music in this too, because like it's a music that feels somewhat like desperate, but it also feels like triumphant at the same time. Like there's a determination in our character, and I felt that tone was really there throughout the world.
You're close to the end, but you're not quite there yet.
Yeah,
so.
And there's like these new enemies they introduced, these like little meat people that like attack you and stuff that are also heavily involved in some levels.
Kind of like zombies, I guess, but.
I suppose, which makes me question. So, like, is Dr. Fetus controlling these things?
Maybe everybody who died from the bomb became a zombie.
Maybe, and those are just the living people from the thing. And you know what? The world is gross because it's just full of maggots. Instead of salt or lava, there's just giant groups of maggots.
It's just like it blew up and nuked the world. And it's like given them 25 years, like post-apocalyptic, but like instantly, so everything's destroyed and destructively, and then the maggots are everywhere, and you're like, well, didn't you just blow it up like a minute ago?
Very much so, and to the point where maggots are even part of the boss.
Yes.
Like
a giant.
There are 2-3 giant worms, and you got to do it. I saw a walkthrough that was so frustrating because the dude just like jumped through like the saw on the other side, and then two of the things just killed. I mean, he died because one of the larva thing killed him or something like that. But like you could just literally camp.
Yeah, it looked like possible. Like for me, that level, the most difficult part was getting them to jump.
Oh, yeah.
It has sort of a sense of, so basically how that boss battle is positioned is it's just a flat battlefield, like Smash, just one flat surface.
Yeah.
On the left and right side you have walls of circular saws, and you're supposed to basically get these maggots to dig underneath you. You see where they're digging. They jump up and they're going to try and jump on top of you. But if you're close enough to the left, their arc is going to allow them to hit the saws and they die.
Right.
But if you're standing right next to the saws, then they're not going to jump up. They're just going to go left and right. So you're supposed to stand in the middle and then move enough when they jump up to get them to hit there. It's possible to cheese them, like when I did it the first time, because when you start the level immediately, no matter what, one of them is going to jump at you. So you can just run over to the side and get one kill pretty easily. So it wasn't necessarily difficult because it's like there's only 2 things to worry about. And usually one of them's going up and one's going sideways. Or they're both going up. You can get lucky and they both jump at you. And sometimes I almost did, but I'd always die. And I was like, I really want to get it all at once. But that one, it took some time just to get them to jump. Like really, a lot of the times I would just be sitting there and they would just keep going left and right. Or he'd go up, but then he'd go straight back down. He wouldn't arch the jump. So that one gave me some difficulty, but not because like it was hard. It was just time consuming. What about you? Was that one particularly easy? Or
I mean, like, in terms of a boss battle, it wasn't like... I think that there were harder ones. My issue was more the smaller maggots that would come up if, like, they would, like, hit the ground or something like that. Because it wasn't necessarily dodging them, but when that would happen, especially if 2 of them potentially did it at the same time, you really had to, like,
everything
watch
explodes
it out.
in this world, So once it dies, you have to avoid the explosion of its death while avoiding the other ones trying to eat you.
Yeah, and speaking of avoiding things, too, one enemy I forgot to mention was, like, this floating head enemy thing that where it would basically, if you were in its line of vision, it would follow you.
Yes.
And it would never stop following you unless it was like out of frame, basically.
Yeah. It's sort of like the rocket, but it didn't blow up when it bumped into something.
No, it just devoured you. Yes. Like it went up and went
It just chomped one chomp, just the whole meat boy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that one also introduced the lasers, which were like, remember, they're not like the rockets, but they start immediately and they kind of have to follow you. There was a level where you had to, it was almost, I guess you could call that one a puzzle too, because you had to jump particularly to get the laser to hit certain blocks while you're continuing to move left. So, because, you know, it's always slightly behind you and slightly outpaces you, but if you let it catch up to you, it will. So that's why it's one of those constantly moving, you know?
You know, I think, if we want to backtrack a second, there was a cutscene, I think, before the Rapture, where you end up finding Dr. Fetus on his thing, and then so you attack him and jump on him. Yeah. You start punching him, and you realize it's your girlfriend dressed as Dr. Fetus.
Spanish girl with Dr. Fetus.
I was so mad. Because I was like, wow.
That is so cruel, man.
That's super cruel. Like, that's when you knew it's like just a vendetta against Meat Boy. Because, like, if it were any other fuck, he'd be like, nah, you know, I'm not gonna waste my time. But, like, nah, maybe he just wanted Bandage Girl, and he's just unhappy she doesn't want him.
That's true. Maybe he's like, Meat Boy, if I make Meat Boy look bad, then he
okay, yeah, and so that brings us to World 6, the end. Which, again, given my 13 hours with this game, I felt personally responsible to stop myself. By that I mean I gave up. I did not beat the game. I got to the final level prior to the boss battle, but I spent about 6 hours on that level. I'm not even lying. Wow. And at some point, I just thought to myself, you know, sometimes they tell you to work hard and the things you want will happen, but what they don't tell you is sometimes you're not going to have the skills to get it done. So I didn't have the skills to beat it. I just did it. And so I did not go. But I do know the boss battle, and I did watch like the cutscenes and all that stuff. So Lucas, why don't you discuss a little bit what happens towards the end?
Well, yeah. So you do. One of the hardest, probably the hardest level of the entire game is that one that Andre gave up on. You know, because that one took me about a good 2 hours. It's probably one of the longest. It has one of the most intricate jumps and precision necessary. You know, you get through one section, and then you got to go wait and do another section, and you got to go through that again. But after a while, you know, when you figure it out, you get to the boss battle. So the first boss battle is you and Dr. Fetus, and essentially he's chasing you with his little rocket. He's firing rockets at you, and he's chasing you, and you got to go through this platforming. And you can't just speed it like most of the other ones, because there's two sets of it's sort of like the boss battle in World 4, where there's two sets of circular saws, up and down, except they both move as a unit left of the screen. So you have to dodge the rocket for a second. Then when it moves, you follow, because you have to go fast enough that you don't get hit by the one at the back, but you can't go too fast and not pace the one in front of you. It moves a little bit, it stops again, you dodge a rocket. You do that about 4 or 5 times till you get to the end. And then basically you have to hit 2 buttons, and it's sort of like a Mario thing. You hit a button on top, it opens a area to your right, you hit that button, and the bridge beneath you falls down. And then Dr. Fetus falls down. And you get, I guess, a little heart tug, a cutscene, because, you know, the little helmet cracks open, and out pops out little baby Dr. Fetus. And he's all struggling to breathe and crawling, and you're like, oh, I feel a little bad about this guy. But Meat Boy and Bandage Girl are back together again, so maybe we don't have to worry about it. And then he gives you a shot of the Dr. Fetus, one last button press. And he presses the button, and he starts blowing everything up. Which then leads into the second phase of the boss battle, which is essentially that one you can just... I thought was significantly easier than the boss battle, or probably the easiest level in the end itself, was that secondary boss battle, because it was just like linear running. You ran all the way to the left. You had a Bandage Girl on your back, but I don't think it made your hitbox any larger, so it didn't really change any aspect of the game, just aesthetically. And there was in that one there's no nothing holding you back or nothing rushing you. And it looked difficult because of the placing of all the items, but if you just took your time and you did it slowly, it was possible to just regular jump pretty much every single... there was no need for speed or precision or timing if you just were very careful. And I was just very careful, and I ended up doing it probably about... I took about 20, 30 times, but then I got to the end. And then you get the final cutscene here with his... everything's falling apart. Bandage Girl's... he puts her outside of the building, you know? It reminded me of... what's that movie? The Haunted Dead movie or whatever, where The
Haunted Dead.
I don't want to sidebar about a movie, so I'll just finish the story real quick. But then, so she puts her there, and then it looks like Meat Boy's not going to make it because the building's falling down, and a big rock is about to follow him. Although, ironically, he dies in other cutscenes and respawns immediately afterwards. So I'm not really sure what that rock falling him would have done.
Like, wait, what is this? Like, literally, there's a scene where Dr. Fetus shoots him, and then he just comes back. He shoots him again, and he just comes back. You know, like, so it's like...
I was like, okay. But then I'm like, oh, he gets saved by the poop guy, you know? He had held him. He had held up the rock for him, you know? And it was like, he looked at him, and he's like, you got to come with me. And he's like, no. You know, obviously nonverbal, but, you know, he looked at him, and then the poop guy looked back and said no. And I guess he found his own way out, and then Bandage Girl and Mr. Super Meat Boy are together on the ledge. And then it's like, oh, they get a happy ending. I think they kiss or something like that, or maybe they hug. And then Dr. Fetus plops right down on top of Bandage Girl, and he's beating the shit out of her yet again. And then end scene.
And end game.
End
yeah.
game, yes, end
and
game.
Listen, I gotta be honest. It
was funny when I saw that.
When I saw that, I kind of had an opposite reaction. I was like, just like, yeah, this is stupid. I'm like, really? Like, the dude saved his life. His life's not even in danger. He can die. Yeah. Oh, wait, Fetus was alive the whole... Why did Fetus need that thing if he could just breathe outside of it? Like if he can jump, why can't he walk?
Yeah.
Like, it's funny that he's beating her up for no reason, but not in the context of it actually being that, but more in just the humor of them actually just making it that, you know? Like, it's just absurd that a fetus is just trying to beat this girl up for no reason other than she's with Bandage Boy. Bandage Boy. Super Meat Boy. Anyways, I don't really have much else to say. We kind of went through the whole game. Aspects of it. It's a pretty simple game. Very easy to...
Not for the faint of heart, you know?
No, it's not the type of game... If you've never played a video
really
game...
hate yourself, you know? Like this, yeah.
You never played a video game, I wouldn't recommend this to be a startup.
The first video game you ever played? Wow, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if somebody... Maybe if someone's just good at following instructions and understanding, like...
Because it does have very simple controls, you know? It's not a lot to think about.
There really isn't. It's like, it's really just jumping and sliding and...
I guess easy to learn, hard to master would be what...
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. In terms of rating, I didn't finish it, but given that, I still probably give it like a strong 7. I really enjoyed the game. I think a lot of the good aspects of it, you know?
I would go ahead and give it a light 8 because I think it did its job well. You know, obviously it's not like an easy game to play, you know? So I wouldn't say it's like a great game for that. And that reasons, and some of the cutscenes I could do with a little bit more, you know? A little bit more lore about Super Meat Boy, you know? But definitely all in all, I did enjoy the experience. Except for that last level, it did leave a sour taste in my mouth. Mostly because it's like, if you spend, 20, 30 minutes on a level and you get it done, you get a sense of accomplishment, especially if it's a hard level. But if you end up spending like 2-3 hours on a level and it's just frustrating at that point, and it's just one of many, it's like 85 levels. So it's like one level, you're supposed to get the same satisfaction putting 3 hours into it. It's sort of like the diminishing returns at that point. So it's like, I understand people who enjoy that, but for me personally, I don't feel like I got enough satisfaction from beating a level than I did feel like I wasted 2.5 hours trying to beat that level. Mm-hmm. So that would prevent me from thinking that this is like a easily accessible game and the difficulty. But no, I did enjoy playing it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we should move on to our next topic of discussion. I think we should do the movie next.
Okay, you want to talk about the movie, huh?
Lucas, you had a movie rec.
I did.
For us this week.
I decided, because I always like to pick films we both haven't seen. Makes it easier, a discussion. It's more lively. A film I'd wanted to see for a long time, because I like the concept of it. It is called The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. I'm not sure if you haven't heard of it. It stars Matt Damon, and then, I don't know the girl. I'm going to call him Matt Damon?
You called him Matt Damon?
Oh, it's Mark Wahlberg?
It's not either of them! It's not either of them!
Oh, who is it? How am I already forgetting?
I know, that's so funny.
No, wait, hold on.
That is so funny. Ladies and gentlemen, I am the movie person, just FYI. So
I am not.
Don't blame him.
I'm not a cinephile. I'm a gamer, not a cinephile. Yo, what are you talking about? Brad Pitt.
It is Brad Pitt.
Oh, okay. Very sexy Brad Pitt. You know?
Yes.
A lot of sexy. But that's more towards the end.
And that's just the beginning.
Beginning of the sexiness, yes. But no, so what's his face? Okay, never mind.
No, I'm not.
So anyways, sorry. We had a momentary distraction. It starts Matt Damon and... just Matt Damon. Oh my god, I keep calling. Oh my god, can you edit all this out? I'm calling him Matt Damon like way too many times.
Okay, you know what? I mean, I'll edit some of it out, and by some I mean just the parts where you say Matt Damon will end up.
Just voice over with this Brad Pitt. Just put that every time I say Matt Damon.
I might only do it a couple times. I want them to know that you're on. That's,
and then I corrected myself with Mark Wahlberg.
Yes.
Before I remembered it was Brad Pitt, I was about to say Elijah Wood.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, it was gonna come out of my mouth. I'm like, no, stop it. It's not him. You know that.
Not Elijah Wood.
Okay. So Brad Pitt, whole point, the movie here. The Curious Case, Benjamin Button is born old. So essentially he comes out of the womb as an elderly man, like with the nearly blind, he's got the scoliosis and everything, the arthritis and stuff, and he's like about an 80-year-old man. Like, he looks kind of ugly. There's a few shots of him too, you know? And throughout the film, it's about his life. He progressively gets younger as he gets older. So, you know, like, so he starts off like in a wheelchair, not able to walk, and then he eventually learns to walk, and he becomes, you know, a nice, virile young man towards the end of his life, and then he eventually does, you know, pass away as a baby, like, you know, towards the end. So it is a whole film of his life. Obviously, it's all fictionalized, but I particularly wanted this movie because the concept sounded interesting to me, and it was definitely like an acting, a character piece, you know, like a lot. He's in 90% of the scenes, I would say, Brad Pitt.
Yeah. I mean, like, really, what we should discuss is, like, more the framework of the movie, because the movie starts off in, like, at that time, modern day.
Yes.
Because I think the game came out in the game. And
it's like a 2-storyline. So
yeah,
I think
because
it's whenever the movie came out. That's what
it was. 08, I think.
Sure.
So, like, because I want to say that there's a woman dying in a hospital, and her daughter is just being with her, and she asked her daughter to read her journal entries out of this book that she had. Mm-hmm. And this book is from the perspective written by Benjamin Button, played by Brad Pitt. And so whenever our character is reading the words in the journal, we flash back to that time period, and we get to see what's actually happening, like, in there and stuff.
And that's narrated by Brad Pitt sometimes.
Mm-hmm, yes, and so we just kind of, like, go through his life, the people that he engages with, everything kind of leading up to that moment. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that's basically, like, the synopsis. I mean, without getting too much into detail, which we might get into a little later. Yeah, what did you think?
Oh, the film? I actually really liked the film. I enjoyed it. It reminded me a lot of Forrest Gump, because it's just like someone's whole life, you know?
Okay, interesting you say that, because writer Eric Roth is the writer of Forrest Gump.
Oh, this movie as well?
Yes, the same guy who wrote Forrest Gump did write this.
Yes. I definitely see it, you know, because it's sort of just like how everything, and it's just sort of so many different themes of his life, you know, like, not, you know, obviously he just lived a very long life, and he did a lot of stuff, and it's very interesting to see all this stuff happen kind of around him. It's more so not what he does, but what happens around him that I was really enjoying him. The characters that he meets, you know, I especially loved the phase when he was on the boat with the pirate, not the pirate, I called him a pirate, he's not a pirate, but it was like a salvage boat, I guess you could call it, and he has a captain who's very eccentric and wilding, you know. I remember a particular scene I thought was funny. I'm not sure how old he was, but this was, you know, maybe towards like about a third in the film. They're at like a bar because, you know, because everybody, obviously they see Benjamin Button and they think he's an old man, or they think he's the age he looks. But mentally, of course, he's only been alive for a certain amount of years. So I'm not sure how old he was in that scene. I'm talking about when they went to the brothel, you know?
I would for legal sake, we'll say he's like 21 or something.
Yeah. I think but obviously he looked like he was 50 or 60.
Yeah, he looked very old.
And so, you know, and he tells him that, he's like, the captain asks him, he's like, you ever laid with a woman? He's like, no. Because I don't know what they're talking about, you know? And he's like, in all your years? Like, you're shitting me, right? Like, he's like, you're serious? And he's like, all right, we're going to get you laid, you know? Of course, Ben has no idea what he's talking about. I'm like, Brad Pitt. Why do I want to call him that? I don't even, wow. I don't know.
No, that part would just be like, Brad Pitt. Brad.
So, yes, they go to, like, get drunk and stuff, and not even, he does get laid, and that's kind of funny, but before that, he's giving, like, a big speech, the boat captain guy. He's all drunk, and he's talking about how, his father always wanted him to be like in the business too, you know, and he wanted to be his own passion. He wanted to be an artist, you know, and he's got all these tattoos and stuff, and that's what makes him an artist, you know. And then he was like, yeah, and he called himself an artist, and then Brad Pitt was like, well, yeah, you're like, he's like, what am I? And Brad Pitt's like, you're a boat captain. Like, he totally doesn't acknowledge the artistic thing of it, which I thought was really like, I'm not sure if you remember that scene. I might not be articulating it particularly well, but if you've seen the movie, you should know what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
And that one, it just reminds me, it's just very like funny to see that, because it's like, obviously it's not what he should have said at that moment, but it's like, just because he looks older, he's more like a childish mind, you know? Or not childish, but like a young adult, where he doesn't really see the concept of like somebody who has been lived young to old. So it's just interesting sometimes, like, you can see like that perspective of it. I just thought it was such a very interesting like character, kind of like to build upon.
Yeah. So yeah, this movie is really ambitious, and it's really great in a lot of things that it tries to do, because like, when you start off, you're not quite sure how everything's like tying together, but what you get with like the Benjamin Button situation is a lot of interesting themes of kind of not only how we experience time, but how one would if given opportunities to see the world from that perspective that he does. And I do agree that a lot of the interactions he has is really like, you know, pretty interesting. You know, a lot of the characters are really lively, like very lived in, you know, and the relationships that he builds with these characters like are really felt throughout the movie. And the movie is long, don't get me wrong. Like it's 2:45 or so. But I do think that given the context of what we build up, where we end up with like how the characters roll out, you know, like those things like mean something, you know. And it's very interesting that, you know, he grows up having been adopted by a family or a woman who works at like a home for elderlies, because his father had left him on the doorstep after his wife had died giving birth to him, because he was fucking ugly.
Yeah, he was super ugly.
He was first of all, let's point out the fact that he didn't go to that orphanage first, or that home first. He went straight to a pier and looked out to a river.
He was gonna throw that baby in the ocean. And he got caught by a cop. So he ran and dumped the baby off at somebody's doorstep. Literally, some random person's doorstep.
It was crazy. I was like, wow, this dude.
He watched until he's like, oh, they'll probably see them. He didn't wait till they saw the baby. He's like, they'll probably see that baby. And then he left.
Well, not only did they, but that's the thing, they didn't see the baby. The dude stepped on the baby.
The dude, they're having a conversation here. He has basically his motherly figure and his fatherly figure. Later in the film, when he's just born, they're having a conversation because he's trying to court her still, and he's walking backwards down the stairs, and he freaking kicks the baby, and he steps on it as the baby's lying there on the doorstep. His dad didn't even care to wait to watch. He literally didn't even know. He left. He was like, they'll probably see the baby. I don't think we gotta worry about that.
But yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed a lot of the ways that like the sets and like the time periods were constructed, especially like cinematography wise, because they do a lot of things where they kind of use grainier footage, kind of like there are times where you're doing flashbacks and it kind of has different like effects on it that kind of signify that. During the main portions of like the flashbacks, though, it's pretty standard in terms of how it's presented. Like,
yeah,
I wouldn't say that
it's not groundbreaking, but
yeah, like it definitely does its job, and I definitely appreciate a lot of the older time like footage, especially when we get the character that gets the strikes of lightning, where there's like a character that's constantly referencing lightning, and they kind of do the aspect ratio.
And they go back to him a few times every time, and they bring it up again, you know? Because I thought about it. I like that character because they said like he's like, oh, I've been struck by lightning 7 times and survived, and like he'd say 1 or 2 times, and then 20 minutes later he'd my God, what's his name? Brad Pitt would run into the old guy again, and he'd say another 1 or 2 ways he got struck by lightning. And I think those are probably supposed to be thematic or fit in with the scene of what's going on in his life right now. Because I think I don't remember. I'm trying to remember specifically one that I thought I was like, oh, this caught on, but I'm not sure. But either way, I did enjoy that because it was sort of like added a sense of like that was like a sense of structure to the film, you know? Because obviously like it is very structured and everything going on, but it's just like it's like it relates you to the time that all these events, happened already, and it wants you to understand that, that it's all like in the past.
Yeah. And the thing is like there are times within the movie where we cut back to kind of like the real world and her kind of having that conversation
with her mom,
with the mom, and trying to understand what's really going on, and given what ends up happening, like I'm gonna be honest, like that whole through line didn't really work for me. Like, but by the end, like when everything was said and done, I felt like that they could have had a much clever like backstory, like a better framework for the flashbacks, or have just told the movie from his life on, you know?
Like they didn't even need to.
Yeah, because like I kind of felt like whenever they would cut back to like the modern day of her just reading and stuff and like, you know, having that little brief break, it felt like it disrupted the pacing a little bit for me. So I didn't really find myself all that interested in what was going on with them.
That's fair. I see what you're saying.
The more meat of the bones was that. Now, granted, they excuse it by explaining that Benjamin Button turns out to be the father of this girl.
Yes, and that's why it's important.
Which is a very fucked up way to reveal your true father to you. Like I get
on her deathbed.
I get the mom is old on her deathbed. She wants her but then
hours.
It's just kind of like, wow, like you really just left this to the very last second.
I knew there was something I was forgetting. I didn't put it on the grocery list, you know?
Yeah.
I got the eggs and the milk, but I forgot to tell my daughter who her real father is. I gotta do that before I die.
Yeah, and yeah, so like I wasn't really too keen, I guess, on those moments.
I understand that. I see how you're saying, because perhaps if it was framed at just Benjamin Button's entirety life, and then maybe a 20-minute snippet at the end where it's all revealed that it was being read through a diary, you know? And then they still wanted to include the whole mother-daughter thing, you know? It could have been included directly.
Yeah, I think that could have been like a better like bow at the end of the present.
Yeah, because especially how his timeline ends, you know, with because basically, guys, when he gets younger, the woman, you know, the old lady, the mom, she ends up taking care of him, you know, like as a child while he gets old and he dies. So it's very strange. Like I wonder how she thought about that, you know?
Well, yeah, that's also my thing too, because I would say that this movie has like a really great 2 hours worth of material. But the big question I kept having in my head was how far did it take this concept?
All the way.
And they did go all the way. But as I was watching this whole like time where he having to go through his adolescence, cussing out like social workers and having to like being taken care of by this really elderly lady, it made me think like, you know, maybe they should have stopped where they could have. Like I found myself kind of feeling like it was just very uncanny. And I guess thematically I understand what it's supposed to be, you know, like the idea of, you know, somebody kind of fading from your life as you're seeing it, you know. And I mean, one could make the argument that the lady too, you know, like she had issues like remembering certain aspects about like the story and whatnot. So, you know, like I'm not saying like it's like an Alzheimer's type thing, but what I am saying is like it was interesting the fact that like she had a book about his life and she made a reference saying that like, oh, I never read that or something like that. But I thought like, why didn't she read this book about him? Why would she have told her daughter that she never read the book that her daughter's reading to her? You know, that felt like a strange thing to tell her.
They were in pretty much constant communication for a lot of the times she was alive. Except for the period when he went off on his own, where she didn't really give a shit what he was doing. You know?
That's true. He did send her a bunch of postcards.
Yeah,
and
the
stuff.
Postcards, and then you know they met the one time, then they didn't meet again, and then they.
That was also very weird.
That was true. Yeah, I think it's because he was old. He just didn't feel like. Well, not old. I don't know. I don't know why they didn't do anything.
Well. Because I had the same feeling in the beginning where, like, he sees this little girl and he's like, she was the most beautiful girl I'll lay my eyes on. But, like, it's like this 80-year-old man.
Yeah.
And I get it. He's not supposed to be 80. But, like, there was, like, a sense of unease where I'm like, oh, how is this?
That, you know?
Yeah. And the movie did good in writing that line. It wasn't like, they gave him enough humanity and character to make you realize, like, he's not, like, maturity-wise.
Yeah.
Like, he is a
not
child.
Trying to be predatory,
You know? But then we get to like close to the end where he's like maybe like 20 years old, like he's like in that Fight Club Brad Pitt phase, like he looked exactly like Tyler Durden, and like she. But the whole scene where like she interacts with him and she's like, oh shit, I didn't expect you, and it was like, oh yeah, you know, I have a husband now. He's really great. He's good with the kids. I like him a lot. And then like 10 seconds later, they're just fucking. Which, granted,
she couldn't resist.
Given the context, maybe you would just give in to that, I guess. But it just felt very weird. But here's the thing,
it's probably been like at least, well, how old was the daughter? It'd probably be like maybe 8 or 10 years since she'd seen him, right?
Yeah, I would imagine so. You know.
So it's sort of like that one last ride, you know?
Yeah, literally.
He's getting younger. Every like pump, he's literally getting younger.
And that's
She's like, all right, 4 more, you gotta stop, because then you're crossing the line there.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Because then what happens is when she is pregnant and he ends up having to leave, like the whole conflict of like you can't raise 2 kids at once is like, you know, you probably could just stay with her till like a certain age.
I was thinking that, like, you could have been a little younger when you left.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think he had to leave then. Like,
yes, I agree.
He could have like left when he's like, no, maybe
when they had hooked up. I think with how young he was then,
that probably would have been the limit. That would have been a good time to be like, all right, we should end it now.
Yeah, because I think she would have been even old enough to understand that. You know, because I mean, she was already like 8 or 9 still, and it's like, yeah, maybe the whole concept of an individual who ages backwards, but it's difficult to compare. But like, if you physically see somebody getting younger as you're getting older, like you just can't not believe it, you know?
That's also another thing too. Like,
everyone's okay with this?
Yes. Everyone did not give 2 shits. I was sitting here thinking,
I love that. No scientific basis behind it.
Yeah, like that's what I'm thinking.
The doctor at the beginning was like, "Yeah, this baby is old as hell. He about to die."
Yeah.
And like,
but then he doesn't.
He never sees a doctor the rest of the film.
Yeah, and I just think to myself like, nobody around him notices this. Like, I get it, maybe when he's at the home, people are so old they're just dying around him, which I do like that theme where he's kind of having to progress and see all the death
all
first.
All his friends are starting to die. That's kind of, I was like, damn, bro. And so, yeah, like, they addressed, like, the whole idea of death and life, and they did it in reverse, and I thought that was really beautiful, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and there are definitely, like, interesting aspects and, like, you know, ambitious story stuff. I mean, I think the performance is all really great. I mean, I don't think there's any, like, weak actors in it. I mean, Brad Pitt is given a lot more of a kind of reserved meditative thing that we've seen him do, but like he still has a lot of like cool, like more emotional moments, you know? Like I reckon the scene where his dad reveals to him like that he's his dad is pretty like interesting because like he kind of goes back into his life a little bit and is trying to.
Yeah, so once he realizes like, oh, he's not like dying, he's actually like a person. He took him out to dinner once or twice, and then I feel like they were about the same age when he revealed to him, you know, or maybe the dad was a little older, you know, and then at least older than how Brad Pitt looked.
Right.
Sorry. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like there's some technical aspects I think deserve shout outs, particularly the makeup, hairstyling.
No,
I mean,
really
not just for him,
no
really.
De-aging,
yeah, but like I mean, okay, I think that there might have been a couple of like CGI spots for like more green screen, not for the people, but like more green screen usage. Like when they're on the pier, like there's like an area where like you might be able to say, okay, like that was probably like a little bit of green screen, but like still the shots in those are really good, and I like a lot of those makeup uses, not just for like Brad Pitt himself and like the de-aging and whatnot, but also just for, you know, a lot of the other characters too, and kind of showing their age and showing like their growth, you know. I mean, Taraji P. Henson, who plays his mother, what was it, Queenie? Is that her name?
Yes.
Queenie, yes. Yeah, she, you know, her makeup was really great as she going throughout too. Like by the end of her life, like she was actually a lot bigger, you know, than she was like at the beginning.
Yeah,
you know?
like she had gained weight and everything. Like definitely she had looked like she had gotten older, you know? Mm-hmm. Like I felt like it was believable with all the characters, except when they had when Matt Damon was really young, you know, as they're making him younger. I'm like, oh, okay, this looks a little odd, you know?
Yeah.
But oh my god, I called him.
You called him Matt Damon again. Look, at this point, I can't not leave it in.
Scrap the whole podcast.
Yeah, scrap. We're gonna have to
start over, guys.
Start over.
Brad Pitt.
Brad Pitt. You could just call him Benjamin Button. That's his character's name. It's literally Benji. In the type Benji. Don't call him Benji, please. I mean, here's the thing, like there are like some sequences that I felt like I didn't really get much out of. Like I didn't really feel like the war sequence kind of fit in at all.
Does that make this a war movie, Andre?
No, I know it doesn't. That's like saying Forrest Gump's a war movie.
But isn't it a war movie?
I don't. Well, okay. Well, Forrest Gump is more of a war movie, both like in terms of that being war and ideologically, kind of. But like, I don't think that this is like. that. Like he's not like constantly thinking about war, right? That doesn't really have as much effect on him that much down the line, really.
Yeah, he didn't really care about that.
Yeah, that's kind of why. Like I felt like, and plus they're like, oh, this tugboat's gonna take down a submarine, and they did, and I'm like, okay, this is some bullshit. Like that's literally what I just thought the whole scene.
I know, like the submarine didn't maybe it didn't have time to go lower, maybe they just didn't expect them to ram it. But I'm like, it seemed like every single person on that submarine died.
From that crash. It got scrapped and then just torn in half, and
like the Titanic, it's cracking out and blows up. I'm like, no one person would have swam out, and got on this boat. And like everyone on the boat freaking got lit up by this submarine, like with the machine guns, and they were trying, and it was interesting. I was like, okay, how is he getting out of this? I'm like, oh, that's just it. Yeah, it was almost comical,
Yeah, it felt very weird.
And I think, I don't know, like, this might just be trying to give the movie credence, but especially because it's aged by that time, like how young he was. Like, I think he was he was like probably 18 or 19. He was like ripe age to go to war. To war, okay. Yes, so it's like how he would view it in a sense of like it's not fantastical, but it's definitely like it's not like as gritty as serious as maybe like a veteran would look at it, or an old man looking at it. So I think part of that maybe that's just like the framing of how he viewed the experience, because that's how we're seeing it, how he viewed how it happened,
Okay.
I'm not saying what happened didn't happen, but I'm saying is we're viewing it from Benjamin Button's perspective. So you have to kind of take that into consideration.
Sure. Yeah, I suppose. I mean, it's not like he was the only one of that age that was on that boat, though. Like, the twins seemed like they were fairly young.
Well, maybe, yeah, but everyone else kind of seemed older, at least, Well,
I understand.
But he looked the oldest.
I understand what you're saying. Yes. I'm just like, okay, like, they could have done that in a more effective way. Like, if they had just come up on the bodies with no submarine, that easily could have just been like, oh, I've literally seen floating bodies everywhere. That could have sufficed easily, I don't think that their crew had to die in order for that same theme to kind of have gone. And yeah, I mean, the only other thing I can think of really is the score. I wasn't really like keen on it that much. I thought the score was okay. Like, the music definitely like had its place in certain scenes, but it is one of those movies that definitely overuses its score. Like, I feel like a good amount of scenes had like some form of music.
Yeah, I kind of tuned it out in my head at some point.
Yeah.
I was like, it's a nothing score.
And then there are points where I'm like, man, this scene, like the scene where like she's reading like her father's Post-it notes and her birthday, he sent her every birthday, and like you hear the like swelling of the score and the camera's going in, and I'm like, this was just a slow zoom in as she's reading it with no score. I feel like the emotion of that scene would have been a lot more impactful,
Especially because at that point, because she was like questioning, like, is this even real, And I don't think like that's when she started to believe it, like, hey man, this man actually existed, because all these postcards are real,
Yeah, but yeah, I'm not really a big on that one. Sure. But yeah, I mean, there's not. I don't really have much else to say. I mean, The movie's very ambitious. It has a really interesting story. A lot of the technical aspects are great. Yeah. Performance-wise, I think everyone's pretty stellar. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of really interesting thematic work going on here. It's just sometimes there are certain things that just take me out whenever we come back to the real world. Sometimes there are a couple scenes that I was like, eh. I will admit that the point to where he started, like the point where he left the family was kind of the point where my interest in the movie started dwelling just a bit. Like, I was going up pretty high, and then it kind of like went down. It didn't plummet. No, it wasn't like the worst thing in the world. I just think that like the interest and investment I had in the movie was starting to like dwindle a little bit. But all in all, as a whole movie, I really liked it. I think we didn't even mention that David Fincher directed this. That's why it's one of the reasons we picked it.
Oh yeah, because I was thinking of Fincher films because we want to pick directors we've seen films from, Yeah,
and like I wouldn't say that it's probably one of his weaker movies in his filmography. But that said, I mean, he's made a lot of bangers, so I can't really complain that it's like that. So, yeah, I'd probably give it like a strong 7 out of 10.
A strong 7?
I'd give it a strong 7.
I'd give it a strong 8.
Strong 8?
Okay. A lot more. That just reminded me about that scene because when they first move into their apartment together, they have like an air mattress and they leave it in the living room, And like you get a montage scene of them putting everything up on the walls and stuff, and they still have the air mattress there.
That was great.
That was great. Yeah,
that was a great scene.
And then once they had the house all set up, and they move in, and then he's like, "All right, bye."
Yeah,
you're pregnant, bye. I'm not raising no kid.
Literally, she was awake, and he's just like, yeah, you know what not happened.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
You didn't have to, he had to be that cold about it, too, you know?
Maybe he thought he was doing what's best for them, for the future, you know? Mm-hmm. His future child.
Anyways. All right, well, our final topic of discussion today. Mm-hmm. I had an album to pick.
Ooh,
musica. And I decided to go with one that I've heard great things about, considered one of the greatest rock records, maybe just records period of all time. That would be The Dark Side of the Moon from Pink Floyd. This is a album, 10 tracks long, kind of like I would say it's like half ambient, half like existential dread. That's kind of like how the album kind of flows. And it's a pretty long, like it's 42 minutes for a 10-track album. 42 minutes is pretty long, I would say. And most of those songs or lengths are kind of in a couple of different spots.
Yeah, this particularly very long song.
Yeah, because
a lot of them are just instrumentals. I would definitely say it's like a symphony with vocal backgrounds.
Mm-hmm, yeah, with an occasional song, or a lyrical song that like squeaks in there.
I'm sure the sheet music for all these for the album, it would be probably double the length of the lyrical content, you know?
Oh yeah, I mean even the songs that have lyrics, like they're not like completely lyrical. Like even something like Time, the lyrics don't even start till like 2 minutes into a 6.5 minute song, you know? So, you know, you get like long instrumental breaks even within the songs that have the lyrics. What did you think about the record, Lucas?
I definitely enjoyed the record. You know, as far as like a front to back listen, you know? I like sort of not like thematic albums, but this is what like a concept album, you know, where everything kind of flows together. Especially like just for my ears, it's beautiful to listen to an album where this one song and the next song blend together, and you don't know when one ended and the other began. And that's one of my favorite things about music, you know, especially because you just taking it all in, you know, like it really is an experience, you know, the entire album, and it's definitely something that should be listened to like beginning to end. There's not like there's only one like clean break about halfway through the album where like one song ends and another song begins. But even still, every one, the ending, you know, whatever's going on at the ending, whatever instruments are playing, is what's playing at the beginning of the next song, you know? Mm-hmm. Or there is like an abrupt change that's like to signal, hey, this is like a new theme. Because it's like it really is like a roller coaster, you know? You're going up and you're going down, and there's breaks, but it's very consistent.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with everything there. Dare I say it's the best thing we're talking about today. Because I've listened to this a lot since we've listened to, and we've listened to this a few weeks back, and, you know, I've been just trying to revisit it and just trying to, you know, kind of piece everything together. And I mean, like, obviously I don't think that this is like a confusing album, but it certainly is one that on repeat listens does kind of form a mood, you know? And normally when I listen to music, and again, I'm not the biggest listen to music, I'm mostly listening to individual songs, and don't get me wrong, there are songs on this I've listened to more than others, but this is one of those few albums that I feel like if I'm gonna listen to a handful of the songs, I might as well just listen to the whole thing, because it's like 10 tracks. Like, okay, if we're starting off from beginning to end, we start off with our track 1, Speak to Me, which is kind of like this only 5 second long, like, kind of intro track. It starts off as silence, and then as the track goes on, you get, like, these, like, small sounds of, like, either footsteps or, like, clocks or, like, the money machines.
It really did feel like ambient noise, you know? Like they picked a specific, like, one sound from every song, you know?
And then they kind of put it all there. And, I mean, to say it's my least favorite of the album is a little bit weird, considering what it is. But
they decided to make it. I would personally say, like, it feels like an intro to the next song. Like, they should have, not that they should have done anything with it.
They could have just combined the song. And listen. I'm not here to tell Pink Floyd what to fucking do. This album was made almost more than 50 years ago. So, like,
Jesus Christ, wow.
1973, I think. Maybe not 50 years then. That's like 27.
That's 50.
Oh, that's 49 or something.
Oh, yeah. Maybe 49 or 50.
Just almost 50 years. Almost, but, like, yeah. And that's also another thing, too. For an album that came out in, like, the early 70s. like, this Boomer album is a banging album, too. Like, honestly, like, it still feels very modern, you know? And like, that's the thing. It's a personal thing for me when artists have intro tracks that are just nothing. Because, like, I feel if you're going to introduce an album, just introduce it with a song. You know, introduce the album tone through the first song, you know? Like, I feel like even if they had just skipped that altogether and started off with Breathe in the Air,
like a 9-track album,
that would have been totally fine, and nothing, I don't think anything about the album would have changed in any thematic way. I don't really think. Now, I will say that maybe, like,
it wants you to get comfortable. It's like you're watching a movie. You gotta get in your seat, get your popcorn ready. You know,
it's like it's the prelude,
and then the song starts.
I don't know. Maybe it's because I already just am preluded when I go into albums, anyways. So it's just a prelude for my prelude of the album. So I'm like,
it's like a prelude, you know.
But there was.
I'm gonna pre.
I'm gonna. God damn it! It's a great Game Grumps gag.
Yes.
I'm gonna pre.
After this podcast, go watch Game Grumps.
Oh yes, we are not sponsored by Game Grumps because they do not sponsor.
But still, good content. Watch good content creators. Support the content creators you like.
Oh yes, very true. So we get to the next song, which is "Breathe in the Air," which is the first kind of somewhat lyrical song on the record, but this is a lot more airy, a lot less sporadic and.
There wasn't a lot of like heavy like metals, like drums or like the clanging noises.
It almost feels psychedelic in some ways, you know, like with kind of like the higher like registers, kind of string areas.
It does pick you up, you know, it kind of picks your head up and it places you in the air, you know.
You know, and it's just a nice like, you know, kind of like intro to the track when you hear the breathe, you know, it's kind of
and it's very airy, and all these words are describing, you know, breathing in oxygen. I'm sure this is all intentional, you know, because it does feel very airy, it does feel very ambient, you know. And it kind of just wants you to feel everything, especially with the track beforehand. How it's like it introduced you, you know, intentionally to walk you into this. So you're like, hey, now you're here, and now feel everything, and it just kind of wants you to float, you know. In the air.
Yes, it's a very floaty album, and yet at the same time, it's interesting that they they kind of contrast it with like a more like melancholy type like lyrics about like not. You know, really knowing where your ground is, and once you have your place, having to adjust and find other places, you know, like, and just kind of the experiences that people go along, like people tears you'll shed, people you'll meet, like things like that, you know, like it feels like you're kind of floating on like your own kind of thoughts, you know, and like I guess that's a great like way to kind of bring in like that audience or like that listener in to what the experience is kind of be, you know, because this track is also very short. 2 tracks in, like this track's like 2:40 or something like that, and you know it does start off with like a quicker instrumental stint, you know, but
because then it starts with more instrumental before you even get to the lyrics, you know,
and so there's a lot of interesting. You know, things that are happening like with this song and how it leads into track number 3. Also very seamlessly, you know, as you mentioned earlier, because the transitions, like this whole thing feels like just one longer song. We get the song On the Run, and this is definitely oh shit. Sorry, I got hiccups. Definitely one of the more instrumental tracks on the record. It feels like you really are like trying to run for your life.
There's like, giving you anxiety.
There's like this really like futuristic like synth beat that they go for.
A little Blade Runner vibe.
Yeah, like with very warbling like synths that kind of almost make you feel like it's like an adrenaline pump of your blood, you know. And then that really doesn't stop. There's like this really interesting intensity of the song.
Like it keeps building up.
And it builds up as it is. Almost as if you yourself are on the run, whether it be from the melancholy thoughts of the previous track, whether it be from just kind of the ambiance of everything like that was going on, you know, like I really did like that kind of intensity, and I think that this is definitely one of the more kind of fascinating tracks, I guess, in that, and how it's able to kind of like rope your mood in, and then it kind of ends with like a little bit of like a quieter, like taking softer steps. And
it hits a peak towards the middle of the song, and then it ends toward the end. So it's not like it doesn't give you that high and then ends abruptly. Like it takes you all the way. It takes you all the way up and then all the way back down.
And you basically just hear like small, quaint running footsteps, and it really does kind of like simulate like a really good mood, I think. So it
is meant to put you in like a great mood. I believe it.
I like that track a lot, and then that transitions into track 4, which is Time, and I think Time is an awesome song. I think it might be my favorite song on the record. I think it's the longest. I think it's like 6 minutes, 30 seconds or something like that. But it also transitions, you know, from the first track into that, where, you know, you hear all these like kind of ticking clocks and like these ringings, and it's just kind of like the surround sound, you know, not just about like alarming you to the events of like what time it is, but more so the constant wavering of time, you know, like that's constantly
it's ever
around,
present, you know, all around you.
And it starts off with like just a smooth, you know, like, you know, soft instrumentals. You hear like the, you know, nice little bass drops and like the little tings of the drums.
Definitely,
you know,
a more vibey one.
And then like, you know,
it's meant to. I guess it's meant to mellow you. It mellows you out. It's sort of the opposite of On the Run, because that one is really exciting you, and this one's supposed to kind of mellow you down. It's supposed to like, it's rocking you almost, you know.
Yeah,
you're rocking with the waves, you know.
And
instead of soaring with the eagles.
And again, it's interesting because it feels like the more intense tracks are the ones that don't have the lyrics, but the ones that do have the lyrics tend to be much more meditative and sad than like what you would expect.
They're extremely thoughtful and introspective, you know, and it's something that it's meant to take itself like very, like, you know, like psychedelically, you know. It's not grounded, you know. This is all in the air. It does. I'm not saying it doesn't take itself seriously, but it definitely doesn't. It's not something you're supposed to listen in to hear what they're having to say. You know, you're supposed to experience the sounds and the words together as one. You know, and it's not like one and the other. You know, they're very connected. Aspects of the
I would definitely agree with that. And, you know, I mean, you know, my lyrics might be like the best part of the song, because like there's so many like interesting like ideas that they bring up. The idea of not like really understanding what place that you're supposed to be in, because like the subject of the song is essentially waiting for his life to figure itself out, but in waiting for that to happen, the life that he is actually living is slowly chipping away, you know. And, you know, it's just talking about like wasted time and things that, you know, you wish that like kind of were different, and not really like understanding it. Because especially in the first half of the song, it seems like a much younger person, you know, just thinking, well, I have time to spare. I have all this stuff, you know.
Again, about time, you know, your perspective of time is warped. When you're younger, you know, you think you have all the time in the world, and then as you get older, you're like, where did all the time go?
Right, and you know, and especially in the second verse too, where it's definitely a lot more like you can tell that this character has matured more and like had more of a custom fear to it, you know, as they're going on, you know. I mean, one of the things that like really stood out to me when, you know, especially when you're like just kind of examining the lyrics, is kind of like what they kind of do towards like the end, like. Okay, because like in the second verse, since the guy's kind of older, you know, they talk about, you know, time getting shorter, you're getting shorter of breath, you know?
Sure.
And then they end the verse, you know, with like, you know, time is gone, the song is over, thought I'd had something more to say. Like, if you really look at the song, it's not really saying anything about this subject per se, that even at that time might have been thought of or written down. But I think what it does is extenuates the mood about how time is viewed, where like there isn't any gloss you can put over time or any explanation of it that would be satisfying to somebody.
If you've lived a whole long life. Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
I bumped the mic.
Yeah.
A long life, even a long and fulfilling life, that doesn't inherently mean you have something intelligent to say about the process of time or the process of aging, you know? Like, it's just how you personally experienced it. And it's going to be similar for a lot of people, but it's also different for everybody. And so it kind of like accentuates like how, like, yeah, you know, maybe there is something to be said about all this, but I don't know. Fuck if I know what it is, you know?
Yeah, you know, and what's interesting too is that from there we transition to kind of the ending portion of the song, which almost sounds like an extended portion of Breathe in the Air. You know, you have somebody coming home, you know, oh, I'm home at last, you know, I get to relax my feet, you know. And this doesn't necessarily just have to apply to, like, the singer per se, but just kind of anybody's life, you know, where, like, you come home from a long day of work, whether you're here as often as you want to be or not, you know. But then by the end, you know, you see that vision in the fields, you know, that kind of vision of what is death, and you realize that that's kind of what's coming to you, which transitions us into our track 5, which is The Greatest Show in the Sky, right? right? Or the Great Shot in the Sky.
The Great Gig in the Sky.
The Great Gig in the Sky, yes. And this is also another instrumental track, but it is like it's another intense one, because you start off and it's almost like an ascension up into heaven, you know, like you kind of go.
I was yawning, but I was trying to keep my mouth closed.
Okay, you can yawn if you want.
Okay.
Like it's fine. No,
I don't want to seem like I'm disinterested. I'm very interested in this conversation. I like this album. This album is great.
No, yeah, and you know, with the greatest, like, you know, Gig in the Sky, like, you know, you get these really wailing, like, serious, like, vocal patterns, you know, from this woman. Like, she is really putting it all into there.
Yeah, her screaming like it's like not an opera, but like what's the what would it
like
be?
A soul
performance,
you know? And it's weird because, like, when you listen to the song at first, and especially for the first portions of it, like, you think about, like, okay, like, going up to, like, this gig and understanding kind of, like, you know, like, I interpret it as this is the moment where this subject has passed on and is going up to that sky. But when you hear, like, the wailings of this woman, like, at first you think it's, like, almost like this angelic kind of triumphant type of thing, but there are aspects to it that almost feel like it's almost, like, painful, where it's, like, there's almost this kind of, like walloping, like, you know, of loss, like, that's still, like, there.
Like, why does this have to happen, you know? Like, you loved it that it, and, you know, it occurs, and it's beautiful for what it is, you know, but it's also painful for the same reasons, you know?
Yeah.
To observe it.
And I think that it really does, like, kind of give that, like, credence to the idea of kind of, like, the unknown, like, knowledge of, like, afterlives and, like, how we, like, interpret, like, our existence beyond our own bodies.
Because,
you know?
It's both, you know, it's excitement and it's fear, you know? Like, you understand it's going to happen and you want it to happen because, you know, it's good. You want good things for yourself, but it's also the fear that, like, what even is a good thing? Like, what do I know? You know, do I even know anything? And it's like, you know, of course it's a rabbit hole when you start thinking about it too much, but especially if you just don't think about it and you just kind of feel like you get all of that is conveyed just through the instrumental and through the voice, you know? They don't need to tell you anything. You just feel all of it. And you just understand and you just make the connections in your head like, wow, like this is something that, you know, it's going to happen to everybody. And, you know, we talk about it all the time, but I feel like we don't discuss it, you know? We talk, but there's no dialogue, you know?
Right.
And there's no conversation to be had.
Yeah. And so, like, I think that this is, like, you know, this is a highlight on the track for me. This might be, like,
that might be my second favorite.
I might say it's my second favorite, too. I don't know. But, I mean, because we get, like, 3 great songs back to back, because then we go to strong 6, Money.
Money's
and Money is, like, just a nice banger. This is a song.
That's a song.
Yeah, this probably feels like the most single song of the entire record.
If there would be a single,
Yeah, and so, you know, it has a lot of really, like, nice, like, bass lines at the beginning. I love,
like, a little cash register.
The cash register staying, and then when they bring the instruments into it, it's like, bro, like, that's so good. And, you know, I really like a lot of, like,
art.
Yeah, and I really like a lot of the topics about it because it's cynical without necessarily being too introspective to where it can bring up, like, because with time, it's a great song to listen to and appreciate. But since it is introspective in a way, it can get emotional at times. But, like, Money doesn't have that, like, aesthetic to it, but rather it's more of observational, you know? Like,
kind of a little more surface level, I suppose.
But it's still interesting in the lyrics they bring up and talking about, like, money and how, you know, it really affects, like, our lives, you know? Like,
we need it for everything, and we do it all the time.
In the third verse, where it's like, you know, money's a crime, share it fairly, but don't take a slice of my pie, you know, like the idea that people tell others that they should be more generous, but yet they themselves are not, you know, and so, and that saxophone solo, man, that entire, like, 2.5, 3 minutes of just, like, you get the guitars really, you get that sax in the back, and then that's what I want to mention too, is, like, there's kind of this, like, call and response section with it, where, like, there's some instruments playing on the guitar, and the sax kind of matches it a little bit.
Yeah, they're playing with each other, really, you know? They're playing with each other for us, you know?
Yeah, and it's definitely, like, really, like, intense, but also lively. Like, it feels like really, like, you want to bust a move to that shit, you know?
Definitely, you know, once you want to get it there, you know? And not to, like, get too introspective, but, like, a potential, especially because considering it's an electric guitar and the saxophone, you know, one could be considered more artsy, right? Like, and then one's more commercialized. Like the electric guitar, especially with the rock sound, you know? So to have both of those, especially in a song about money, you know? To have both of those conflicting themes presented together and meshing together. It's a telling of people's lives, you know?
Right.
Obviously, you know, you work for your money, and yes, you buy commercial items, things to sustain yourself, but you also do things that you don't need to do. You know, you also extravagant and lively, and everybody is unique in their own position, but we all have so many similarities because we all work. We all have a way to make money, and we use that money for plenty of different things. So it's like we're together and then we're separated, but it's all symbolic, not symbolic, but like
chronic?
Yeah,
synchronized?
Yeah, sure, synchronized.
It's all synchronized.
Synchronize our watches.
Yeah, no, I totally... No, that's what I should do. Every time you say Matt Damon after the first time, it should just be the Team America World Police Matt Damon.
Oh my god. The Field Actors Guilds.
Oh yeah. Alright, so we transition to the next song, right. 7, which is Us and Them. Yeah, I think this one is one of the more mellower tracks, kind of like one of the more fluffy ones.
We're winding down, I think.
Yeah, I think we're winding down a little bit. I still like the track, and I do think it has some pretty, like, more lyrics that are a little bit more, like, interpretable, you know, compared to the other ones, because the other ones seem a little bit more, like... The other ones, like, they're interesting, but they're not necessarily hard to understand. But so some of these lines, I still not necessarily sure what they mean. You know, he cried from the rear and the front rank died. General sat and the lines on the map moved from side to side. You know, I don't necessarily... it's one of those songs that I'm still trying to comprehend, I guess, in terms of its lyrics. It has a interestingly and like nice sound, you know. And I definitely think like the saxophones in this seem a lot more romantic. Seems a lot more like kind of. I'm trying to think of the word for it. I
I understand exactly what you're saying. You know, because you know, especially with the lyrics, because this one particularly doesn't want you to not that it doesn't want you to, but it doesn't want. When you're listening to it, it's not like the same as the other ones because it's sort of like there's more to this one, I guess, than what you would have with the other songs, because it wants you to think about these a little bit more. Because everything else, not to say it was surface level, but it was like, yeah, it was easily interpretable. You knew what you were getting, and now towards the end of it, because especially thematically with the song, you know, now that you're getting towards the end of it, you hyper focus on things. You know, when you're younger, you're like, you know, the songs that tells you when you're younger and you don't think about it as much, but then you get older, you overthink everything. So these ones, it's a lot more like. I guess I would say it's intentional, but it's like, I don't want to say confusing, but it's intentionally written in a sense that it's like you want to listen to it a few times. It is interpretable because it sort of fits with the theme of the easier to interpret songs were in the beginning, and as you winding down, getting to the end, it's starting to get a lot more symbolic and a lot more representative of themes rather than representative of literal.
Okay, and I think reading a little bit...
genius lyrics this?
Well, yeah, because like reading a little bit more into this, it seems as though they're making a commentary on kind of like war and it's like general like, senselessness, you know?
Yeah.
And especially, you know, black and blue, who knows which is which and who is who, up and down. It's the end of only round and round and round, you know? So, yeah, a lot of this definitely seems... And I mean, I guess that ties in with like the money track because, you know, that's definitely another type of like concept
it's like
song.
Everyone in your life where you look, you know, we're all stuck in these cycles, you know, people in a war, and it's like, who, you get everybody in the military, do you guys all want to go to war? Probably not, but...
I'd argue most people don't want
you know?
to go to war.
But the people in power do, so that's why war happens, you know?
Mm-hmm. And that gives more credence to the meaning, you know, us is them.
Yeah.
And them. Because it's not just us and the enemy, but it's also us and those who control us.
Yeah,
you know?
and them, you know?
You know, them that, like, start the wars.
And it's even, like, the us and the them. Like, the us is, like, you and me, you know? And us versus them. Like, you know, even within sections, there's always, like, pairings, you know? Not everybody gets along with everybody. And we're so different from each other I'm not saying it's impossible to get along, but we're so different from each other that we can't, like... You know, we can't group us together and say, you know, this is an us and they are the them. Because within the us, there's more us and them. And within the us and them, there's an us and a them. A me and a you. And everything, it all repeats itself cyclically. Mm-hmm. So we're all stuck in this social circle. Round and round.
Yeah, and so that leads us into track 8, Any Color You Like, which is another instrumental track. Another one that, like, is not, per se, trying to, like, I don't know, say much, I guess, about, like... I think it fits in the context of transitioning us from the war symbolism to kind of like the next two tracks that are kind of almost like combined in a way, you know, it definitely feels like an interlude of sorts. It is.
Okay,
like,
yeah, that's fair. An instrumental interlude because it wants like a little ginger.
And then, there are some like vocal snippets kind of that you can kind of hear, you know, and like it's briefly touching on things about like choice and, you know, kind of illusions of freedom and stuff, but really like there's nothing like concrete there to like tie it in with like the rest of the album, I guess. To me, this feels definitely more of the general transitional track, which is still not bad. Like, right. I still like listen to it when it's going through that. But it does go into our track number 9, which is, what is that one again?
Brain Damage.
Brain Damage, okay. You want to talk about this one, right? Because, like, you like this.
Yeah, no, this one especially, yeah. Well, I'm more so the ending Eclipse, like, with the lyrics, right. Yeah, but this one especially because it starts off and it's, like, a lot more... You know, it's wrapping up the album, so it is the ending of the album. And it's definitely, like, a lot more headbanging. Not headbanging, but, like, not as airy as the other one. It's definitely more grounded, because now you're coming back down. You know, the ship has landed, you know? Everything, all the airing has stuff and it's done. You know, you started off high, and then you ended on the low. So you get a lot more, like, the bass and a lot more of the drums and stuff. And especially when you get towards the middle with the lyrical content, you know? How it's talking about it, and it just seems like everything's kind of, like... You know, it all, like, you know, we live in a society, the whole thing. It's all, like, it's all binding together with us. And I'm trying to remember, like, I'm trying to say more on this topic, you know?
Yeah, no, like, you know, like, it definitely has, like, a really cool intro, and I like, the transition between the verses and the chorus. Mm-hmm. You know, it definitely has, like, the chorus has, like, kind of, like, a nice, like, lighter, like, kind of mood, and, like, the chorus, or the chorus, I should say, and then the verses don't necessarily not live up to that, but it also kind of has, like, a more of, like, a timid, like, way of, like, presenting that, like, as we, like, go into the chorus, you know?
No, definitely, and especially as it leads into the ending, you know, and has that ends and leads into the next track, you know, into the final track, I believe, which is Eclipse.
Yeah. And
so that one is just one long verse, you know, and until it filters out towards the end, and I think that it's basically an extension of the previous song, you know, but it's just to wrap everything up. It gave me the vibe of, like, you know, when the album shuts off and the lights shut off and you're looking at yourself in the mirror and that's what you're supposed to see, you know? You're supposed to hear everything you've heard, you know, all that you is and all that you are, you know, all that was and all that will be, and everything just, you know, you want, like, you can, it really is like a, not like self-gratifying, but like a self, like, centering kind of like, it wants you to think of yourself as, like, bigger than just you know?
Right.
Part of something bigger.
A little bit. The other song, you know, like the longer verse and kind of like the way that everything kind of wraps itself up, you know, because he's talking more about just like things that like we are, you know, like generally, you know,
like things very abstract.
Yeah,
you know?
Things that you buy, things you taste and feel, you know, like he's more talking about like the experiences of your daily life, you know. And
sort of like all the things that make you know, but then also wants to imply that, you know, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, you know, like everything that you encountered and everything that's made you who you are, you know, you are still the person you are, you know, you are that because of this, but you are that because of what hasn't happened to you as well.
Yeah,
know?
and it also ends like a little bit more in kind of that kind of ambiguous sense too, because when he's referring to like, you know, the final lyrics of like the actual verse and stuff is, you know, and all that comes to and everything under the sun is in tune, but the sun is eclipsed by the moon. You know, we have this idea that like the world is okay as long as we're in sunlight, but there is always going to be that moon, and there's always going to be that things
that all my ducks in a row, everything's gonna work out perfectly for me, and it's like, well, you don't know that, you know,
the eclipse, you know, and even
the eclipse is coming, then something else is gonna happen,
and even in the outro, literally the final things before like you hear like the heartbeat kind of trailing it off is like there is no dark side in the moon, really. Matter of fact, it's all dark. You know, so like, you know, that's kind of a downer.
Yeah, it is a downer thing, you know,
to put it on the thing. But like, keep in mind, I guess for an album called The Dark Side of the Moon, I guess that it like kind of fits in with that.
But he just said there is no dark side of the moon. This album doesn't exist.
Maybe it doesn't. Maybe there is no dark side. I mean, like that could also be a reflection of what like the album's supposed to be. Because if you look at the cover, there is like a rainbow section. You know, like it's all supposed to be black.
It's like a prism, right? You know.
Yeah, almost. You know, and so like. like, maybe you could argue that, okay, one of the sides, like the earlier side of the album definitely seemed more lighter, seemed a little bit more like a light side of it. And then once we got into Money, that's when the dark side of it really came in, and hence the Eclipse type idea. But if you really think about it, ending on the song Eclipse as the final track, starting the eclipse of the sun, leading into with the album, right? You could make the argument that that already eclipsed the sunny parts, meaning that the rest of the album is actually the more tragic part. You know,
like it's out of order, maybe. You know,
it fits in with the theme that both sides are the dark side of the moon because there is none.
It's all tragic.
It's all tragic in a way.
There's no comedy, all tragedy.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you know, it's definitely not like the type of album that you can just give somebody who's not interested in music, I guess, you know? Like, if no one heard, like, Pink Floyd before, I would recommend them this album because it's probably their quickest and, like, their most easily understood, I guess. But at the same time, it's not necessarily, like, one you put on to put yourself in a good mood, you know? But
I'm still on to get some work done. You know,
I'm still in a good mood. I'm still in a good mood when I listen to it, man. Yeah. I can't, like, it's a really great record, you know, like
it's not, honestly, it doesn't bum me out at all, you know.
Yeah, despite the cynicism and despite the lyrics, it's still not an album that puts you in a place of like, oh, I'm like down in the dumps now, right. You know. It's definitely like it's more of an experience, I guess, than an actual album. Definitely. I would say. Yeah, and I mean, the small issues, like, you know, maybe, like, the intro track didn't need to be there, you know.
It's just a lot of instrumentals, you know. I'm not really particularly heavy on them either. Like, I enjoyed these songs, but, like, as a person, I'm just like, all right, just get on with it, you know? Like, why'd you gotta strum that guitar another 30 times? Like,
hey, but you know what? Some of it works. Like, and I don't give a shit about it in certain songs, but, yeah, I mean, as an album, I mean, there's not really a lot that I can say that, like, others haven't said before about its lyrical content and its presentation. I'd probably go with, like, a strong 9.
Yeah, no, it definitely lives up to this hype, you know? And I would say it's a great album. Like, as an album, front to back, I would give it a 10, really.
Oh, wow.
I really enjoyed it. I think it's great. And maybe not just, I mean, it's still a 10, even though I wouldn't see myself picking one or two songs and listening to separately, you know?
You think you probably just re-listen to the whole thing again?
Yeah, I would just want to hear the whole thing again.
Well, hey,
you know?
Maybe that's what a 10 should be, I guess, right? Like, if it's like, you feel so, like, that it fits as a sum of its parts. As an album,
yes, you know? Like, as a whole item itself, you know, it is a masterpiece, you know? So, yeah, high praises all around. Definitely should listen to that. I'd say listen to that, and then watch the movie, and then play Super Meat Boy. If you want to follow us along at
home. We didn't do that last time where we did the rankings, I think. But yeah, I think I would agree. I would go, the album's probably your best bet to do. The movie also, and then Super Meat Boy. I mean, I liked all of them, but you know, Super Meat Boy is also only for like those games, I guess. You know,
for a particular taste, you know, for those with the refined palate, you know.
Very true.
Us gamers. Okay, so I think that wraps up all the media us boys consumed, right? That's the word?
All the media boys.
I was trying to throw the tagline in there, but I messed it up. So that means we should discuss next week then? Or?
Yeah, so next week we are each, well, maybe not next week, next show.
Week with the quotations.
The week the quotations. Maybe it'll be in 3 weeks, maybe a month.
But no, next show is a good way to say.
Yes, we are almost back at the original rotation. This is episode 4 next week. We start off with me, who has to recommend a video game. And I was going to try to recommend something super old, but I was like, maybe I should recommend games I haven't played that I actually have, and then we can go from there. So I suggested that we are going to play Batman Arkham Asylum, the first Batman game in that series. Yes. I hear the other ones are better, or at least City.
Yeah, Arkham City is really good. Arkham Knight, it's better and worse in other ways, you know? And then Arkham Origins is like a prequel, so it's made by different people.
It's kind of its own thing.
Yeah, I would say it's like a one-off because it's made by a different company anyways, you know? But it just takes place in the same universe.
Interesting.
Most of the game is similar, obviously with open world and the fighting mechanics, but you can definitely tell it was made by somebody else.
Okay.
But on Arkham Asylum, it's a good game. I think we will enjoy it, Andre, especially, you know? I'll go ahead and try and see what I can get done. But I think as a Batman character, you know, you really get to, especially Mark Hamill's Joker, you know? He's a great part. He's what sells that game, you know? He does a great voice acting for it, you know, and the movements and everything. And you really get to, especially sometimes are pretty not scary, but it's definitely a lot of like the freaky stuff's going on because it's Batman. The rogue gallery, they're all there. They're all trying to f with Batman.
Right.
So like you do a lot of stuff. You're like, damn, Batman's a busy ass night. Here at this asylum.
Very true.
And I mean, I can still think of some scenes in my head that I'm like, oh damn, I'm not looking forward to playing through that.
No, that's right.
Okay.
Okay. Well, Lucas, I think it was your job to recommend an album.
It was my job to recommend an album. So I thought we were doing some, genre defining, classic best albums ever, I would pick another one that was may not consider one of the best albums ever, but definitely has a lot of singles that were considered great songs and is, of course, by an excellent artist. So we will be reviewing Michael Jackson's Bad album in 1983, I believe.
Oh, okay. A full decade later.
Yeah, almost a decade, yes. And it has a lot of... I think one of the reasons I picked this was because I was looking it up, and I believe it had 6 or 7 of the tracks from the album made it to the top 10 singles charts, separate from the album. So it definitely has a lot of memorable songs. You're going to recognize them immediately. And maybe some of the ones that you don't, you'll hear and you're like, oh, hey, I've heard that song before, too.
Yeah.
So hopefully we get that reaction out of it. And that would be more of a poppy ballad, There'll be a lot more lyrical content, a lot more for us to digest. It's not as, I don't think it's going to be as experimental as Pink Floyd.
Oh, no, probably not. It'll definitely be a pop record.
It could be.
But it's still going to be a banger, though.
It's not the king. What do they call him? Michael Jackson? The King of Pop?
King of Pop.
Okay.
Yes.
I was thinking the king because I was thinking
Elvis, yeah. Who was a king of rock.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And as the kings did, they stole it. They stole rock. Well, we also have a film.
Oh, yeah.
That we needed to mutually discuss. And I mean, we briefly discussed time period and kind of like things. And then Lucas thought, hey, you remember that movie with Eddie Murphy we watched? Dolemite is My Name. Why don't we just watch Dolemite? And so we're gonna watch Dolemite, 1975. Yes. We're going.
I think it'll have a lot to say about society.
Yes, definitely modern culture, and I'm
sure it won't
looking forward to seeing it. Actually, we'll have to see.
Hopefully, it's not dated at all.
Yeah, well. I wouldn't get your hopes
with that shoestring budget,
But hey, you know what? We gotta keep that in mind. That
I saw the behind the scenes, Dolemite is my name. So.
You're like, I know, I saw it. Well, all right, we got the recommendations out of the way. So I suppose that's going to be it for the show. Yeah. The last thing I want to do is we do our annual Would You Rather question. Or,
when this podcast comes out,
yes, once a year. We are doing our continuous Would You Rather question. So, Lucas, I have a question for you.
I would love if you asked me.
Okay. I'm
just thinking about what I'd rather do.
Let me find a good one here because I didn't actually pick this out prior to.
Oh, no, it's okay. We do our research here on this Media Bois podcast.
Very true. Okay. Oh.
Okay. You got one?
This might be a quick one. I don't know. But it's interesting. Would you rather buy 10 things you don't need every time you go shopping? Or always forget the one thing you do need when you go shopping?
That's frustrating. I mean, like, assuming my income isn't affected by, I'm not buying, TVs and blenders,
That's true, you're buying just cheap shit you don't need.
I'm like, let me buy some cat food, I don't even have a cat. How would I buy that? So then maybe, but, just 10 things is such a large number of items that I'm just not going to use.
Don't need.
Yeah. But, the one thing I do need, if I go to the store to get bread and I get a bunch of other crap that's not bread.
That would be super annoying. Well, here's my thing.
I have to
I could make a list prioritizing what I do need, right? And then when I know I'll get everything but that thing, I could just have someone else bring me that thing, more than likely.
I mean, that's
if I weren't in a position, though, where I could have someone bring it, then I guess I would have to strategize my shopping habits.
You'd have to go, twice in a day.
Yeah,
or get something. Other stuff and forget the next thing you were going to get.
That might actually waste... Oh, that would be super annoying. You'd have to waste
a lot of time.
But the thing is, you'd also be wasting a lot of money getting things you don't need. Well... To be fair, though, you know what?
Yeah. You can donate them.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to say, I'm going to buy 10 things I don't need, but those 10 things I'll just give to someone else. Yeah.
Someone who does need them. You know?
Exactly. Because I don't think... well, I mean, maybe realistically, I might just eat it. I don't...
If it's food, I feel like, yeah.
Yeah, well, it depends on what it is.
Because I'm like, don't need... It's like, well, what about
I don't
want,
need socks right now. Well, maybe I could use
Because, like, every time you go, you buy a pair of socks, and you have, like, 60 or 70 pairs. So, like, at a certain point, like, things I need now could become things I don't need, you know? Or maybe there's some like, what if I'm not hungry and I don't need food, but I'm going to buy like the deli food, you know? Mm-hmm. That's going to go bad in like a few hours, you know? Or if I go when I'm hungry and I'm not going to buy any food, you know? So it's definitely interesting. I wonder how that would apply practically.
Right.
So I suppose maybe I'll just forget the thing. I'll go with forgetting the one thing I got, you know? Just because I don't want to be buying a bunch of random crap I'm not going to use.
Very true.
But good question.
All right, then. Okay, well, that's going to do it for the show. Thank you for listening. We will be back with it at some point. Wish I could tell you the date. But we will be discussing all of those things. It will be spoiler discussions. So if you want to experience those in some way, shape, or form, you're more than welcome to.
We look forward to seeing you. If you can stop by again, you know. And if you're here as well, thank you for listening. You know, thank you for enjoying our content. We hope to provide you with an educational experience. That was also... Yeah, you learned a lot today, didn't you?
That's your job next week, Lucas. Or next show, you have to think of an intro. Like, not an intro where we introduce it, but like a thing to do before our discussion that is somewhat educational.
You're gonna learn today.
You're gonna give us a piece of like really dumb trivia or something like that.
It'll be like 20 minutes, like one of those like obscure laws, you know, like the funny laws in countries.
Oh yeah, I remember there was a website that did all that.
You can't walk around with ice cream in your back pocket, you know.
You're like, who the fuck does that? It's like, well, someone until they made that law.
I think in like Arizona, you're not supposed to. You can't bathe a donkey in a bathtub because I think they had like a flooding and like there was donkey here that clogged the pipes or whatever. So some idiot, you know. Always one idiot ruining it for the rest of us. Don't be that idiot.
All right. Take care, guys.